Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you back. Can you believe it's already second quarter? I tell you, 2023 is going to fly by just like 2022 did. But I'm telling you, we are really working on those 6 P's of how you can make a difference in your business. And today we're going to talk about this P is not pricing, but it's sales. But it's the same thing because you got to have pricing right to be able to get the sales. So my guest today is going to help us in that area. But let me ask our guest today, what will you help our listeners today solve?
Gary, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here. And what I'd like to help your listeners solve is really the sales question. We have a saying in business, sales solves all. And that's what I'd like to focus on today.
Pouya Haidari has been in the business for 12 years, 7+ industries, consulted multi-billion-dollar companies and celebrity entrepreneurs, and generated over 100 million in client revenue. So we're going to talk about sales today. And Pouya, I'm really excited about having you on because I told you when we first got to know each other that I enjoy sales, but I think it's one of those challenges that small business owners face all the time. So if you don't mind, would you kind of share your story, how you got into sales and kind of brought you to being a sales expert that you are today?
I'd be happy to. So, it was a mixture of luck, nature, nurture, background, all of it kind of combined, as it is, I guess, for all of us. And when I was very young, I came upon my first mentor who had a real impact on me, Jim Rohm. And one thing that he said really stuck with me, which was, formal education can make you a living, but self-education can make you a fortune. And I just knew right then and there that that's the avenue I want to pursue. I knew I want to get into business and really create the life that I wanted for myself. And I figured, if I can learn sales, if I can control top line revenue, if I can become valuable to a company, to a business, I can work my way in there, work my way up the corporate world. And also I can really learn on someone else's dime. I can learn as being a part of another company and then eventually venture out. So it's pretty much exactly what I did. I got into sales at a very young age. I worked across 7 different industries, gathered a ton of experience, really added layers of depth and, knowledge to my own experiences, and then got involved with some partners. I got into what's known as outsourced sales. So I was building outsourced teams, systems, and processes for huge companies, for some celebrity entrepreneurs, well-known brands. And then from there, it was just a natural progression for me to venture out and do exactly what I'm doing, but on a larger scale, to be able to help small business owners like your audience all around the world. And that was another thing as well. I didn't want to be tied down to US and Canada and corporate contracts. I wanted to work, internationally, which is what I do today. So that's a bit about my own journey and the trajectory.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think it sets us up for the stage that I really want to ask, because you've seen it in corporate environments, but you also created large-scale teams. And what I really want to share or really want to get across in this is trying to get our business owners to think, number one, sales is the revenue generating you have to have, because if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. But I think the question I want to start with is, when we really think about sales and you think about small business owners, and as you work with people, what do you think some of their challenges are as they start to really work in the building their sales team and building it? Because maybe they're the owner and they've the only one that's really done their product before. And now they're starting to think about, okay, I want to branch out and I need to have more people on my team besides me selling.
So a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners are in business for themselves, usually because they have some great idea or they have an innovation or, a different approach that they want to take. to a common problem, and they don't necessarily come from a very sales heavy background. Now, there's a caveat there. Actually, I think you would agree, Gary, that some of the best entrepreneurs on the planet do come from a sales background, which I think speaks for itself. I've met many of them. I used to go to a lot of business conferences and connect with a lot of people, and I always saw the common trends. You know, a lot of these high-level entrepreneurs who had success over the long term came from a sales heavy background. So you have both sides. But like you said, the average small business owner doesn't come from a sales heavy background. So what they do is they prioritize everything but sales, but client acquisition, right? Lead generation, client acquisition, and also making their offers, their products and services set up in a way where they can actually prioritize client retention. You know, you wouldn't believe the amount of business owners that I work with who have a one-time deal, one-time sale, and then they're just leaving a ton of money on the table. And it's something that I like to tweak and fix for a lot of these business owners. So I would say that's the main challenge is, first of all, understanding that it's the most important aspect that you need to prioritize. Again, new money. It's just like oxygen, right? If you need to breathe, you also need new money coming in to sustain your business. And then, of course, to retain those clients and then building systems to be able to do that. I think that's the challenge that the focus really isn't there for most people.
Well, you hit on one that I really want to talk about because it's a challenge for small businesses, not only in just sales operations. I just had a mastermind session with some of my clients, and one of the things we talked about was processes, how to get that out of the information out of the owner's head. So you talk about building those systems and stuff. And I know how important that is for organizations, and large companies have this, and that's how they're able to interchange someone to come in and to go out of that position. But small companies struggle in that. So let's just work on it from this area because we're talking about sales. Why is that so important to have those systems, and how can you help, you know, people think about the systems they need to put in place to be able to generate those sales?
That's a great question. I would say the first reason why it's so important to have systems and processes in place is so that you can start to predict the results, so that you can start to see, you know, what it looks like to have consistent revenue in your business, what the conversion rates are, you know, what those important numbers and percentages are in your business. Because if you can't track it and measure it, you can't grow or scale it. So it's important to have systems and processes in place to be able to really see the reality of your business. The second reason, if you're looking to grow and scale and hire out a team and so on, is that the systems and processes make your business duplicatable. You can duplicate yourself and essentially buy more time. You can multiply your time by hiring people and having them do the role time and time again, right? So I would say those two reasons are the two most important reasons. And, you know, if you're really looking to stay in business and also grow your business, both of those need to be taken care of. So you do need to have systems and processes built out in your own business.
So let's go a little bit different direction and just talk about salespeople in general. You know, you had this desire, and some people think they're a born salesperson. I don't believe that. I think some of us have some skills that we're easier to talk to people. And I noticed on your website, you talk about 3 values you have of learn, earn, and network, but also kind of apply that to why is it so important for a person really, if they're thinking, okay, I'm not a salesperson, but we're all salespeople. Because the thing is, even if we're convincing to watch a special show tonight with our spouse, guess what we're trying to sell? We're trying to sell the show we want to have, you know, or convince, you know, and things of that nature. So share with me what you would say about that for that person that says, well, no, I'm not a salesperson.
So like you said, I think you nailed it. I'm just going to elaborate and expand on what you said because we're completely on the same page here. First things first, everybody's in sales. And, you know, I'm not sure anybody's born anything. It's really a mixture. Yes, of course, you can have, you know, natural inclinations towards things. Maybe some things are within your circle of competence that if you just put some time in, you can really capitalize on. You know, I can speak for myself. I'm not somebody who you could say was born a salesperson, but I also never had a challenge with sales or with communication. I speak multiple languages. English is actually my 3rd language that I speak fluently. So of course that helps. Being able to think in different languages, to communicate in different ways allows you to see different options within any kind of communication or negotiation scenario. So all those are factors. Absolutely. Nature and nurture play a part. But that's besides the point. There's not enough data to support either side, and it's not going to serve you. So there's no point to spend any time thinking about that. What's going to serve you is to realize that you have to work harder on yourself than you do on any job or business if you really want to be successful. So whether you're gifted, talented, or not at all, everybody has to do the work if you really want to win at the highest levels. So it doesn't matter if it's me, you, or anybody else who thinks they're not in sales or they're not a salesperson, quote unquote. We all have to work harder on ourselves, develop those skills, take a solution-oriented approach, and look at, okay, well, even if I don't think I'm a salesperson, which again, we said that earlier, we all are, any type of trying to get your ideas across, communicate anything, like teachers, for example, we're all selling all the time. And if somebody's really telling you how much they're not a salesperson, they're selling you on the fact that they're not a salesperson. So
right.
We're always selling, sometimes just in reverse. So I would tell you, work harder on yourself than you do on your job or business. And that's going to help you become a salesperson, quote unquote, or help you put yourself in a better position to get to where you want to get to.
Well, I ask you that question for a reason, because I'll get a lot of times with my clients that I coach, they say, yeah, but I'm not a salesperson, but they own their company. And I said, even if you're not directly selling the product, you're selling because you need to convince your team of what you're doing is the right process, the values that you and how you want your customer service to be. So I think it's so important. So I guess I'm curious, and we'll go to the sales end of this, is what are some of them skills that you see are so valuable and that you really took some time to really dig into to learn, not only to become a great salesperson, but really you can tell just a communicator, because I can tell from the other end, as you said, you have 3 different languages, but I mean, my gosh, you have the language of English like it's your first language.
Right. Well, I appreciate the compliment. I'll definitely take that. In terms of the skill that I think is most valuable, I'm not going to compartmentalize it and put it into multiple skills. I'm just going to call it sales. And I'll tell you why. Nowadays, with the younger generation, and I'm younger myself as well, but there are different generations, right? When I look at the younger generation nowadays, I guess I'm just an old guy now, but when I look down, what I see is it's a wrong approach to sales and to business, because what they're doing is they're compartmentalizing the different parts of the sales process and saying, this is all I do. So for example, in the online space, I'm an appointment setter, or I'm a quote unquote closer. And I always tell them, you're neither of those things. You're in sales, and you better learn everything that has to do with sales, from the lead generation and acquisition side of things, to the prospecting, to the qualifying, which is the second most important step of any sales process, to the presentation or demonstration side of things, to putting together and presenting a proposal or offer, to closing the deal, to following up. You better know the whole thing from top to bottom if you want to succeed in sales or in business, because guess what? If you're going to go and compete against somebody like myself, good luck, right? So if you want to succeed, if you want to do well, it's not compartmentalizing one aspect and saying, I got really good at prospecting or lead generation. Okay, that's good. But how good are you at turning those leads into paying customers, right? So I would say sales is the skill that needs to be mastered. And to what you said earlier, some of your clients who are entrepreneurs, business owners who say, I'm not a salesperson, you better be a salesperson if you want to be the business owner, right? You're selling the vision, you're selling the mission, you're selling your own products and services, and your prospects always borrow your confidence. So that confidence better be there, and you better be able to convey that confidence. So that's all sales. It all comes back down to sales. So that would be the skill. It's industry proof. Like myself, I've worked in 7 different industries, completely irrelevant products and services, because I had the sales fundamentals down. And then nowadays, of course, working with clients in industries I've never even been in. But again, sales fundamentals, business fundamentals are all the same. And it's also economy proof. Nowadays, with everything going on in the economy around the world, having that skill is a huge asset. So sales would be the skill.
Oh, that's a great one. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I kind of thought the next area, as I was curious, as you have worked in large companies, as well as you've worked with celebrity entrepreneurs, and now you're working with people that generate large revenue, but also the smaller side of it and stuff. I guess from your perspective, what is some of those skills, if we are a small business, that really we need to learn? We've talked about processes we've talked about sales, but what's some of the other things that we need to really think about to get ourselves to put ourselves on the picture? Because we always think that large company, they once were not that large. They didn't become $100 million company overnight. It took time that's there, and everybody sees the success after they're there, but they never see that struggle that's there. And maybe you can use yourself on that model however you want there. But what would you say to those companies that, maybe they're $5-10 million in business and sales now, but they want to grow to that 20 to 30 million. And right now they're having a hard time convincing themselves that they have a market to be able to get there.
I believe what's really important for smaller business owners, and also just as important for larger corporations and, businesses or celebrity entrepreneurs. But I think this is where the small business owner actually has an advantage, is to deliver a higher quality product and service. So the sales side of things is really to get the job done and to have the conversion, bring in the revenue and retain the clients, right? That's what we've been drilling in this whole time. But the worst thing that could happen is you could be the greatest salesperson and sell a bunch of people and then not be able to deliver, not be able to solve a problem with your product or service. So actually on the front end of that, you need to have a good product, a good service. And like I said, the small business owner, the small entrepreneur actually has an advantage there because you can move quicker. Like you said, I've worked with large multi-billion-dollar companies. I've been on the inside. I've seen what it looks like. It takes multiple people, multiple weeks to make one decision. And that just bothered the hell out of me. So me personally, I had to part ways and take a different approach. The corporate world was just not for me. So I think the small business owner has that advantage. And if you can deliver a high quality product and service, you can really separate yourself from the competition, because it's going to create that word of mouth economy, which is only amplified nowadays by social media and whatnot. And you're putting yourself in a better position, and you're always competing with your prospects' last great experience with a similar product or service to yours. So whatever their last great experience was, that's what you're competing with. So if you can just continue to add more value, build more value into your products and services and really top that experience, I think you're going to win. And I think you can even get ahead of the larger corporations.
Yeah. A speaker buddy of mine, Shep Hyken, talks about create moments of magic. Make your customer service experience. That's where you set yourself apart and where it's consistent. And one thing that happens with customer service is it has to be consistent too, because, people notice that if it falls down. And I love that you talk about that high quality experience. How can your experience be different? You'll see after this, Pouya, I still do. When we get done with this podcast, you will get a personal thank you note from me. But that's something I've learned a long time ago. And, Pouya is coming on to my podcast. But what am I thinking for him for? Is because he's sharing his knowledge and expertise with my listeners to be able to share that. So I want to make that experience different. But you know what? Down the road, if I want to connect with him again, we've made a relationship and stuff, and it helps deepen that relationship. So think with your customers, how can you do that? I'm not saying everybody, it's about a personal handwritten thank you note. But what is it for your clients? Instead of just getting the sale, what's the next step that you can take? Because ultimately you talked about earlier, predictable results. Well, predictable results, we don't want a one-time customer. We want a 5, 10, 20-time customer, person that comes back to us, and we become their solution provider, and you change that. And I think that's what you're talking about in sales, I believe.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it with relationships. I'll tell you a funny story here. When I was in my first real career sales job, this is the first time I made my first 6 figures. It was in the fitness industry. And I remember closing up a pretty big deal, and I was really happy with it. And just because I was in a good mood, I was really happy, and we got all the contracts signed and everything. What I did, we were shaking hands, everything was wrapped up. And at the end, I just looked at the customer and I said, this isn't where our relationship ends. This is where it starts. And I just saw the look in my customer's face, and I realized, wow, that really resonated with them. And I made that almost a script. I made that part of my process. I said that to every single customer I brought on. And I took that with me to the auto industry, and then further on to every other company that I worked in as well. And then when I was in leadership positions and training and hiring salespeople, I would teach them all to do the same, and pretty much just completely scaled that line right there. And it made a big difference, tangibly and in an intangible way. It made a huge difference. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's building that relationship and letting them know, when the deal is wrapped up, this isn't where our relationship ends. This is where it starts. I'm here to help you. I'm here to service you moving forward. And I think that's what helps you long term. If you want to be in business or in sales for the long term, you want to build good relationships, you want to be ethical, you want to do things the right way, because it's gonna follow you. And as they say, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation. It takes a matter of seconds to destroy it. So I think it's a huge component. The relationship part is huge from a sales and business perspective with your clients, and from a networking perspective, like you said, with myself and yourself. The network is huge, and your network will pay dividends for life. So if you can build a solid network, it all comes from that relationship aspect.
Well, I thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so important. And doesn't matter what industry you may sell widgets, it's still about the relationship, and relationships stick with you and stuff. And will everyone? No. But the thing is, you'll see the ones that really want a good business. And what I've found is, and I've had other guests on say this, what that happens is when something doesn't go right, and then you fix it with that exceptional customer service, and because you have a relationship with them, it makes them even stickier then, meaning that they'll redo business with you, because if you take care of them, they know they can come back to you, where somebody else, they may have had just the opposite of experience, and it gives you that leg up in the business. One area before we have to go, because you and I both love sales, so I think I could have this conversation for several hours and we could continue the conversation. But one thing, we talked about this some, but I really want to drill this in, because I know a lot of small business owners, again, they're very busy people and stuff. And one of the areas they struggle in is these predictable results, conversion rates, tracking and measuring. And let's just kind of go to the tracking and measuring. And let's just say, they're calling on clients. Can you give a few tips there of what they really need to track and measure? Because the problem is when they don't hold their sales team accountable to generate, sales when you're making the calls is not always the most fun, especially if you're doing the cold calling method or somebody that's not done business with you. But of course, that's sometimes the only way they get it. And it doesn't have to be just cold calling, but what's a couple of suggestions you would give them to really track and measure for a small business owner that has somebody or maybe a couple people doing sales?
I'll give you a very practical piece of advice that I think will help every single salesperson, every single business owner out there. And that would be, if you're looking to track and measure your sales activities and also the results, the conversions on those sales and the revenue you're bringing in, look at the book, show, and close ratios. Those are three different numbers that are extremely important to track. And again, any sales job or any business that you're operating. So the book ratio would be the number of leads that you're speaking to, what percentage is actually booked in for an appointment to take a look at your product or service. From the amount of leads that are booked for an appointment, what percentage actually show up? That's your show ratio. So get that percentage. And then from the show ratio, what percentage of them actually convert to paying customers? They buy your product or service. So that's your book, show, and close ratio. It's very simple to get the percentages. You can create spreadsheets. You can do it in your CRM system, however you want to go about this, but tracking those three numbers is going to be extremely important, because you can look at the bottlenecks in the business. Even as a salesperson, I used to do this when I was just a salesperson working with companies, and I would want to know my own numbers so I could fix and really improve my results. I used to set completely unrealistic targets for myself, and I would almost always fall short, but I would destroy everybody else in my vicinity because I had high standards. So I would always set my goals and targets by the 15th of each month. I like to compress time and do more than everybody else can do and in less time. That was always my goal, still is to this day. So, what I would do is I would track those numbers. And if I saw, for example, I wasn't at my goals and targets by the 15th, I would say, what went wrong? And I would look at my book, show, close, and you can see, oh, okay, the show ratio is terrible. And then you say, okay, well, from the booking to the show up to the actual appointment, what needs to be there? Maybe you implement a touch point. Maybe you implement a free gift, a thank you note, or whatever it might be, right? So then you clean that number up, and then your book, show, close ratios get better. And again, everything is a percentage of everything. The number of sales come from the number of leads. So it all builds upon each other. So those would be the three metrics I would look at. And that's how you can get a real, handle on your results. And again, if you're in sales, if you're in business, you better get a real handle on your results.
Exactly. I agree there wholeheartedly, because if you don't, then they're just spinning their wheels and you're paying but they're not getting the results that you need, and you see your sales are not increasing. Pouya, like I said, I think we could talk for several hours and have no problem, but we're kind of coming up that time. I do have one other question, but before I ask that, would you go ahead and share with them your website? And of course, we'll have that on our show notes so that it's easy, linkable for them. But go ahead and share your website with them.
Absolutely. So the best place to go would be my website is pouyahaidari.com. It's just one word, my full name. And you'll be able to learn more about myself, what I do, and really how I can help you. You can also find me on all social platforms at Pouya Haidari. And if you let us know you're from Gary's show, we'll do something special for you. We'll throw in a free gift. We'll be able to help out.
Great. I appreciate you sharing that. And please go check him out. He's got a great website. I've checked it out already. Some great information on there, and as well as testimonials of people that he's worked with and made a difference for us. So if you're trying to improve your sales, you've got to figure out how are you going to do it? Because the problem is if you don't take action from this, it just becomes great conversation. Instead, let's really improve your sales, because at the end of 2023, that will make a big difference in your bottom line, because your operational costs most likely won't go hardly up. So if you increase sales, what happens? The bottom line increases. That's what I love about it. That's why I always I do a 6P formula, and this is pricing, but pricing is part of sales that's in that formula. Now, I got one more question for you, Pouya, before I let you go. And it's a question I ask every guest is, what small business tip would you give for our small business owners and entrepreneurs that's listening?
The number one tip I would give every small business owner, every entrepreneur, is to prioritize sales, prioritize top line revenue. And that's broken down into two pieces: client acquisition and client retention. And that is how you're going to win in business. Without sales, you don't have a business, you have a hobby or a passion. So prioritize sales.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us, Pouya. Remember his website, it's his name. We're going to have that in show notes at smallbusinessanswerman.biz, so you can go there. Or if you're in your app on your phone right now, it's linked right there. All you got to do is press the button. It's going to take you straight to his website. Please go check out Pouya, because he's got some great information to share with you. But thanks for joining us, sharing your expertise with us.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Now, we always ask, what's the action? The action is, I want you to seriously think about what he talked about in your book, show, and close. Do you have the answer to that question? If I ask you, show me what you booked, show, and close, and you may say, well, that applies differently to me. Then you figure out how it applies and then start tracking those measures. Because when you start tracking those measures, that's what makes the difference. And if you don't know those, what's happening? You don't know what's going on in your business. It goes back to those predictable results. You can't determine what's coming, because that's why in April or May or June, your numbers are off. Because why? Some of these numbers are slipping. And I truly think that's a very beneficial thing that Pouya shared with us. So please go out there and do it. Come back next week. We'll have another great guest, and we'll keep moving right through 2023. It's hard to believe it's second quarter, but now's the time to make the changes, because you can still impact it for the rest of this year. Make it a great day. We'll see you next week.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.